In today's lesson, we will be making some simple low poly rocks. Let's start by opening a general file in Blender. Go ahead and delete the camera and the light. And let's start with the cube. Let's go ahead and name this rock 0.000. And let's make a copy of this for the second rock. So Shift D to duplicate X for the X-axis and slide it here to the right. Left click the cube to make sure it's selected. Switch to edit mode. Hit A to make sure all of the cube is still selected. Right click and let's subdivide this one time. Next, make sure that you're in vertices select, this little icon here in the top left, and select one of the corners of our cube. We're going to bevel this corner of the cube, and the normal shortcut Control B doesn't work on single points or vertices. So we're going to right click and look for bevel vertice. It's the third option down. So click that and then drag your mouse out, and you can see that we're flattening this corner. So I'm just going to go out a small distance like this, left click to place it. Now let's select the back corner, and we want to bevel this again. So right click, but this time we're going to do something a little different. It's a little annoying to have to keep coming to this menu and look through all these options. So we're going to add bevel vertices to a quick menu. So to do that, just review, this is selected, right click, and when you see bevel vertices, right click on it, select add to quick favorites. Now, if I hit the letter Q, I have just that single option. I click that and I make this maybe a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go to the rest of the corners, Q for the quick favorites and bevel vertices, and really quickly just create some corners on this cube, which will turn into a rock. Now, press A to select all of it. Then you're going to use the function 3 button on your keyboard. It's F3. It's above the number 3 or 4 in that area, but you have a row of F keys along the top of your keyboard. So press F3 and search for randomize. Now you'll have a couple of different options. We want the one that says mesh transform randomize. And instead of just clicking on this, we're going to right click and add this also to quick favorites. So now if I click off that menu, hit Q, I have bevel vertices and randomize. So I'm going to click randomize and then look at the bottom left, open this menu, and we can change these numbers to randomly move the vertices around. So the amount, I'm just going to left click, hold down the left mouse button and drag, and I can change this number. So I'm going to drag this. I don't want it too far where things are starting to cross. I just want to add a little bit of random movement to the vertices. You can change uniform a little bit to change that. You can change the normal value. And if you do the random seed, it will just give you a whole new variation on the movement. So play with those play with those numbers until you find something that you like. I think that's still a little bit too pointy. I don't want it too crazy. And once you're happy, left click off. And last, I'm going to pick a few of these middle vertices and adjust them a little bit, maybe even open the quick menu by hitting Q and bevel this to add a flat surface there. So tweak some of these until you're happy with the overall shape of your rock. And you want to make sure that each side of the rock looks okay, because this side looks kind of flat and not like a rock. because when we use this in the future, we're going to rotate it different ways to make it look like we have more than just one rock. So you want each side to look hopefully like a rock surface would look like. Oh, I hit the wrong button there. Let's try that again. There we go. Maybe move this one up a little bit and bevel that. In general, I'm trying to keep it kind of a box shape. And then in a second, we're going to make some other general shapes for rocks. Once you're happy with this rock, let's switch to object mode. And let's select our next square. Let's start by scaling this by hitting S, then X for the X-axis, and stretch it out. Then switch to edit mode. And I want this back part of the rock to be bigger. So I'm going to select the top two vertices by left clicking and dragging. G to grab, Z for the Z axis. Slide that up. Let's select this. Scale this on the Y axis to make the bottom a bit fatter. We'll select the front, scale on the Y, and make this one a little bit skinnier. I'm just trying to create an interesting shape as a starting point for my rock. And I'll move this down on the Z axis. Once you have an interesting shape, hit A to select it all. Right click and choose subdivide, and that will give us some surfaces to work with. Now let's go ahead and use the quick favorites menu, and we'll do the randomize first. And let's adjust this some different ways and see what we can come up with. I think I'm going to go with that. You're welcome to adjust this until you have a shape that you really like. Now, let's stay in edit mode. I'm going to pull some vertices out. I'm going to bevel some of those just to create a more interesting shape. Let's bevel this back corner a little bit. Let's pull this one down and let's bevel it. So once again, you want each side to look interesting and look like a rock, not just a few flat faces. And there's not necessarily a right or wrong. Kind of use your own instinct of what you think a rock might look like. Let's push this up inside a little bit. Let's move this out and flatten it. Let's move this one up. Be careful. If you start moving things and you see where the faces seem to be glitching and going through each other, you don't want that to happen. So be careful about that. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. Let's go back into object mode. Now let's add, by hitting Shift A, a mesh icosphere. Grab this on the X axis and slide it to the right. Let's name this one rock point 002. And let's start by scaling this on the X and Y. So you hit S, then Shift Z, so that way you can stretch it out. And I want a round, flat type rock. Now that I have this shape, let's go into edit mode and use the quick favorites by hitting Q, and let's randomize this just a little bit. I don't want to go too crazy, but just find a shape that you're happy with. I think I like that. And where this started out with 3-sided faces versus these that started with 4-sided, I probably don't need to bevel too much, but I might bevel a few of these sharper points to make it look like the rock has been weathered and worn down a little bit. So I think I'm happy with that. So we have kind of a box shaped rock. We have this long rock that's thick on one side and getting skinnier on the other. We have a flat round rock. Let's add a kind of roundish rock to kind of contrast a little bit with this cube rock. So Shift A, mesh icosphere again. Let's grab that on the x-axis, slide it to the left. Go ahead and rename this to rock 0.003. Switch to edit mode by hitting tab. Q for quick favorites and randomize. And you can probably just tweak this a little bit and that will be pretty good shape. In the next video, we will talk about adding the textures.